It's season 15. We're officially 1/4 of the way through the Simpsons retrospectives. Now let's rank those episodes. I took all 22 episodes, threw Codependence Day into the garbage bin, politely escorted my Big Fat Geek Wedding and Bart Mangled Banner out of the building, and then got rid of 3 underwhelming episodes to get our 16 semifinalists. Afterwards, I ate a bunch of turkey, argued with my relatives, went to the movies again, and finally buckled down to determine our 10 finalists. Here are the top 10 episodes from season 15. Milhouse Doesn't Live Here Anymore is one of those that has all the right elements to be a good solid entry, but doesn't quite come together for me to be a top contender. I like the idea of doing this Bart and Lisa story, where you take Milhouse out of the picture and force Bart to actually hang out with his sister. Bart and Lisa have always been able to get along to some degree, either working together or as bratty co-conspirators. Using this cave works well as a jumping off point for bringing them together. It gets at how friends and siblings' relationships can differ, and occasionally merge. How Bart prioritizes them in his mind, how it creates resentment for Lisa. All the Bart-Lisa stuff is great, even if the ending is so ridiculously schmaltzy, they have to do a Scully-era ending just to balance it. My big issue is that I don't think the Milhouse angle is handled well, the capital city visit doesn't add much other than depressing Bart further, and with him totally out of the picture, there's a lack of conflict in the Bart-Lisa story until the very end. The whole thing feels very low energy, you know? This is a vibes episode, not an action-packed one. If you just want to watch the characters, hang out, and be super charming, this is the episode for you. I've always liked this one. I think it's underrated. This is one of those classic Springfield town-wide issues episodes that succeeds in having enough individual story beats to keep things fresh and interesting all the way through. Act 1 with Rufy does a great job parodying idiotic baby music and the cynical merchandise surrounding it. As someone who has watched CoComelon before, this mental exhaustion is very well observed. The main political stuff is also spot on, hitting up the real-life debates about school funding, childcare, and other services. We get a legitimately fun battle between Marge and Lindsay Naegle here. A hilariously manipulative commercial arguing why families should be against the Families Come First initiative. And then Homer's idiotic commercial demonizing people out of state and trying to use Rudy Giuliani to win people's favor. When has that ever worked? The Homer stuff feels more like a detour to kill some time, since he literally doesn't even pass out the bumper stickers, but it's so dang funny, I don't even care. I agree with the sentiment that this episode is a bit too aggro for its own good, how everyone's constantly flying off the handle. It's a very extreme take on a kids versus adult story, but at the very least, this time, they let the kids have the last laugh. Treehouse of Horror 14, 3 segments, ready, set, go. Reaper Madness is the strongest of the 3 in my opinion, giving us an entertaining Homer turn as the Grim Reaper that actually manages to go somewhere story-wise. We have so much fun watching Homer use and abuse his new powers, while still having enough time for opening and closing chase scenes. It's very dense in content, they make the most out of every second. Frankenstein is generally fine, I don't have much to say about it. Jerry Lewis does his nutty professor stuff, there's some funny deaths, and he gets kicked in the balls. I don't really care at all about their relationship, so all that is pretty whatever. But for a forgettable middle segment, it's decent. And the stopwatch story is just straight up fun. Bart uses it in such clever ways. This Homer donut sequence is one of the best jokes of season 15. I don't think the Frozen Time jokes are quite as funny, it loses some momentum, but they did come up with a suitably goofy solution. Bart and Milhouse are really stupid. The only thing I don't like about this segment is the hula hoop ending. Come on guys, you can't just throw together a music cue and call that an ending. What is this, a YouTube video? Let's get this out of the way. Homer's B-plot is totally forgettable and adds very little to Diatribe of a Mad Housewife. The ambulance jokes aren't terrible or anything, but there's not much variety to it. It just kind of exists. The real reason people should watch this one is for the Marge stuff. This thing is so ridiculously charming. Watching Marge peck away at her keyboard, trying to think of the perfect word. Finishing a chapter and marveling, oh, it's so suggestive. If you love Marge's personality, there is so much gold to find here. It's also a clever concept, how Marge writes her frustrations with Homer into her novel. It doesn't explicitly say that Marge is into Ned, we can have our own headcanons there. It takes a more relaxed approach, where Marge still asks for Homer's feedback before publishing, and how, in the end, Homer acknowledges why Flanders' character was so warm and caring. It talks about their issues without resorting to the tired marriage crisis cliches. You could argue that this whole fake-out ending is too much and doesn't make any sense, but I kinda love how much they commit to the screw the audience setup. It's silly writing for an episode about silly writing. Very appropriate. Plus, this episode has Thomas Pynchon in it. Where else are you gonna get that? Alright, we as a Simpsons community have got to stop sleeping on Smart and Smarter. We all sort of remember this one as that weird Simon Cowell guest spot where he bullies Maggie. However, that's selling it short. Smart and Smarter is a unique little Lisa-Maggie adventure with a ton of memorable gags. We have Homer and Bart's bathroom brawl. Suddenly, let's go out for pancakes. Let's go out for tacos. Maggie and her blocks. Lisa's terrible comedy. Skinner shutting her down. You have disappointed Ha-O-Ma-E-er. This weird parody of whatever happened to Baby Jane. Lisa calling out Nelson. Bitter versus sweet. The family members being pooped out. Okay, actually, this ending is super bizarre in general. I think it succeeds as a means for Lisa working with Maggie to save the day, but wow did this story go into a strange direction. I'm leaning more on the jokes for this entry because with a Lisa-Maggie conflict, you're not going to get a deep relationship journey. They justify Lisa's jealousy and do some funny gags, it's not complicated. I do like the twist that Lisa was actually helping Maggie at the beginning. Here the answer is California Condor. At the very least, if you want to see Simon Cowell get punched in the face, here's your chance. iDobot is an episode in which Homer literally battles robots in order to earn his son's respect. It's gonna make this countdown. It's an episode concept that is both action-packed and heartwarming, even if Bart somehow has no idea what's really happening. Come on Bart, the buttons are frickin' Oreos. The episode does capture the early 2000s BattleBot mania, with the announcers and the robot designs. Homer's individual battles are both horrifying and clever, even the ones relegated to the montage. There's something surreal and brutal about the way Homer executes Ralph's robot. Anyway, I suppose the build-up to all the robot stuff is on the flimsy side. Like obviously Bart is humiliated and Homer feels bad for not being handy, but it's not a must-fight killer robots level of personal shame for Homer, right? I think if you focus on Homer's obsessive side of his personality, it doesn't seem that weird. At least he's trying to help his son for once. As for Lisa's B-plot, I know some people hate it, but I think it's so over the top, it qualifies as good dark comedy. These cats get killed so quickly. Coltrane barely lasts 20 seconds of screen time. It's not a fun storyline by any means, doing Snowball 2 pretty dirty. I'm mostly glad that they finally did a storyline with her, even if the solution is kind of a cheat. I'm a total sucker for a good musical episode, and The President Wore Pearls is a great idea. Lisa's always wanted to enact change in the world around her, so let's throw her into an Evita parody and chronicle the rise and fall of her class presidency. Wait, no, the lawyers say this is a totally original concept. Either way, the songs are generally great. Sure, the lyrics can be a little awkward in places, and I've never been a fan of Skinner's villain number. That one is pretty incoherent. But these songs do an excellent job moving the story along, while entertaining the audience with its snappy presentation. Lisa's makeover song is a particular highlight, lots of quick cuts and visual design changes. Also, I love Bart's hammy and overly dramatic delivery of, "But a tango takes two." It's so Broadway. But I think what I love most is that this is a Lisa versus Skinner story, which we don't get that often. It's fun seeing how Skinner tries to deal with Lisa, how much he butters her up and shoos her away when she has questions. He's so used to dealing with Bart, he underestimates Lisa's ability to start a ruckus. Chalmers literally wants to transfer her away, they just can't deal with her. Obviously the music is going to be the main draw of the President War Pearls, but they still managed to put together a fun and memorable Springfield Elementary story that stands on its own 2 feet. I like how, for Season 14, C.E. Doe landed at number 3, and this time, it's another jaunty Mr. Burns romp in Fraudcast News. This spot is quickly turning into the episode clearly influenced by Last Exit to Springfield award. Okay, fine, it's obviously not a ripoff or anything, but you can see the DNA of that episode here. Burns' immature battle with one of the Simpsons, Burns having a back and forth meeting with Homer, his overly complicated plans immediately falling apart, frolicking with Smithers to the land of chocolate music. It's fun seeing how Lisa fits into this kind of story comparatively. She is much more issues-focused, which takes away some of the chaotic Homer fun away, but being a child, Burns is able to bully her in different ways, use different resources in trying to win. I love how Mr. Burns realizes how beneath himself fighting with an 8-year-old is, but still goes after it anyway. I do find myself disappointed at how quickly Burns gives up though. They have a nice culminating moment of the townspeople coming together, and Burns is like looking at his watch saying, "Oops, we ran out of time, let's go shopping." Thus ends Season 15. I once described Fraudcast News as being solid and dependable, and not the most sexy pick from middle Simpsons. But that characterization is a little unfair. For an issue-centric episode, this one does have a lot of spice to it, a lot of that manic and petty Mr. Burns energy. Lisa and Mr. Burns can both be fiery characters, and this episode definitely brings out the best in both of them. God, this episode toys with Homer's emotions so much. It is such a mean episode of The Simpsons. But somehow, it works. I am totally invested in this relationship, hoping dearly that Homer can have his mother in his life again. I mean, just look at this music montage. How can you say bringing Mona back was a bad idea after seeing this? Doing a parody of A Beautiful Mind was both timely for the show and a clever way to bring Mona out of hiding. Like, yeah, we can nitpick the logic of these newspaper messages, but it's still an offbeat plot device to get things moving. You could also argue that Mona beating her initial charges so easily, with a tearful plea from Homer, undermines her whole backstory. But I like the idea that they let Homer's feelings for his mom drive the story. That in the climax, Mona has to stop her son from continuing the vicious cycle of running from the law. It's such a clever way to build upon the original Mother Simpson formula. It does feel like a proper sequel. My main issue with My Mother the Carjacker is this plot point, this dumb, gimmicky Mr. Burns trick. I get it, it's supposed to be flimsy and cheap, but it's not satisfying as the big turning point. It feels emotionally manipulative, pouring on gallons of sympathy without fully earning it. That being said, playing with the character's emotions goes hand in hand with any Mona Simpson episode. If the assignment was to show the high highs and the low lows of this relationship, My Mother the Carjacker was a success. I'm legitimately surprised this is landing at number 1. This wasn't what I was planning on picking going into these rankings. Simple Simpson is not a perfect episode by any means. Structurally, it gives us a disposable Act 1 set piece and an inciting incident that feels random and arbitrary. I guess Rich Texan is just a giant asshole to Lisa for some reason. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Hey buddy, the asshole adult story was a few episodes ago. But honestly, I don't care about any of that weird ancillary structural stuff, because the core concept is so damn fun. Homer as a superhero is always gonna bring the funny. It's played in such an endearing and childish way that suits Homer's personality. That he's like this little kid playing superhero, putting underwear over his clothes, going around teaching people a lesson. This would be so much worse if he were fighting crime for real. Throwing pies at people like Comic Book Guy and Krusty is much more in Homer's wheelhouse. They do a good job giving the story some actual stakes, while keeping things light and fun. Even when the big villain turn happens, it just results in Homer pieing himself and some Girl Scouts, and then going after the Dalai Lama for some reason. It's such a loving tribute to the genre, giving it moments of gravitas and direct homages to 2002's Spider-Man, but constantly undermining it, with Marge knowing the whole time and Lisa pointing out she left her iced tea in his secret lair. It's not the old schlocky Clark Kent without his glasses sort of commentary. The emphasis is on how Homer specifically bungles his way through everything. It applies the Homer character to the superhero genre, not the other way around. That's its secret sauce. I was tempted to put My Mother the Carjacker at number 1 because it hits harder emotionally and there's more layers to it. But when I think of season 15, I think of Simple Simpson, that iconic image of Pie Man on the roof. In a relatively more conscientious and sober season 15, the most fun episode ended up winning out. Just missing out on this list were Catch 'Em If You Can at number 16, followed by The Fat and the Furriest at number 15, then Today I Am a Clown, The Way We Weren't, 'Tis the 15th Season, and finally The Wandering Juvie as the Bubble episode. I don't know if leaving off the Juvie episode is a snub or not. I don't hear people talk about it much, but it is a solid little Bart adventure, and Sarah Michelle Gellar gives a memorable performance as Gina. It was really close to beating out that Milhouse episode for the number 10 spot, to be honest. Let me know in the comments what your favorite episodes of season 15 are, and how you'd rank them. Am I overrating any of these? Do some episodes deserve more love? Honestly, I was surprised by how many of Marge and Lisa's episodes made it on here. Season 15 really seemed to find good story ideas for both of them. Next time, we're off to the religious experience that is season 16, in which Homer makes a biblical halftime show with Flanders, converts to Catholicism with Bart, and successfully predicts the end of the world. Spoiler warning for the future, but season 16 is a very apocalyptic year. As always, thanks for watching.